Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with veteran jazz pianist and educator Bert Seager. He was raised in New Jersey, learned some serious jazz ways in California when he was younger, and he has been in Boston since 1981, making music and teaching the kids of the future. He watched Bill Evans in his younger years and got some advice from him on practice and many other things. He's been all over the United States and in the land of jazz worship, Japan, and he's been there quite a lot, and he has a lot of great stories to share. So get to know Bert and dig this interview, my friends.
Hey, Bert, thank you for taking some time out today. I appreciate it.
Oh, come on. Thanks for being in touch. I looked at your list of people that you've interviewed and, saw some of your, listened to some of your shows. You really have been doing this quite a while, know a lot about music and have a lot of music of artists that I love. So I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Right on, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, this is all a labor of love, man. That's all there is to it. I'm going to start off here and just get kind of a general snapshot of activity and what has been going on in your world lately.
What's happening in this past 9 months is that I've started a band called Tetraptych, and that's a word to describe a 4-panel painting. Like a 2-panel painting is diptych, 3-panel is a triptych, and this is a quartet, and that we rehearse on the first Tuesday every month. We have a gig at the Lily Pad in in Cambridge on the first Wednesday of the month, and then a gig up in a club in Ipswich, Massachusetts on the first Thursday. So we have 3 days a month that we're together rehearsing, and it's kind of a luxury to be able to do this, to have musicians that you're playing with regularly discussing how the music moves forward. And so we're recording our album next month. That's the most exciting new thing that's happening. But the players are Cuban saxophonist named Eddie Paz, and an Israeli drummer named Dor Herskovitz, and a bass player from Boston named Max Ridley. I'm about 30 years older than each of those guys. Max just got a full scholarship to the Danilo Perez's Global Institute at Berkeley. Eddie Paz and Dor won their master's, earned their master's degree at New England Conservatory, where I teach. And that's probably, the other big thing that's going on in my life, is that I spend, 3 days a week at the conservatory where I went to school 35 years ago. I just so enjoy being part of that community, and I feel like, I'm not only giving something back, but also I feel like I'm very much, still a student and learning by being around all these people and taking classes there, and as well as teaching classes.
That's beautiful. Let me ask you this. To kind of get into recent activity, is it safe to say your latest album was in 2014 called The Why?
Yeah, that's a very different project, and that still goes on. The Why was my most recent album, and that's a chamber jazz group. I won a fellowship to go write music at the MacDowell Colony. That's up in New Hampshire. It's an artist colony 100 years old, and they give you a cottage, and they deliver a hot lunch to your cottage, and the cottage has a Steinway in it, and there's 25 other artists, each with their own cottages, painters, architects, this and that. Anyway, I wrote the music for that album, and we were basically doing the same thing last year. That band was playing, every month, meeting, and we recorded in a really fine classical music studio. And that had cello. Catherine Bent is on the faculty at Berkeley, an Israeli bassist from school, Ehud Eitun, and a classical percussionist who knows a lot about Middle Eastern rhythms. So he would make me tapes of some beats, and then I would write tunes around some of those beats while I was up at MacDowell. Really, really was excited and happy to play with that band, and I think it's sort of run its course. Like we play, but I'm not as devoted to that project. I think that's what you have to do as a musician, just keep reinventing, keep, finding the edge, the people that are really interested in, moving it forward.
Absolutely. So we're going to depart from the present, kind of go back in your life. You're obviously in Boston, grew up there. What was it like? What was your childhood like in Boston that gave you this love of not only music but jazz?
Oh, I grew up outside of New York City and New Jersey, and then went to college in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So, I got to see, my parents took me to see Ella Fitzgerald and Oscar Peterson. What can you say?
Wow.
And Bill Evans. And I saw Bill Evans so many times. He used to play at a place called the Top of the Gate that was free, no cover charge. And I could, go in during high school and run back up to the Port Authority building and catch the last 12 o'clock bus home. I didn't know I was going to be a musician. I had basically thought that these musicians sort of sprang from the womb playing like this. And I had even asked Bill Evans, at one point, like, how do you learn to make these sounds like this? And he said, well, you just practice certain things until you get to know them so that you don't have to think about them anymore. And then you build the next layer on top of that and the next layer on top of that. It didn't really make any sense what he was telling me back then. And I was an economics major at a small Quaker college in Philadelphia. And when I thought I would just go out to California after I graduated and, get music out of my system. That's what I thought. And then I'd go back to public management grad school and maybe write some fair tax policy or something like that. And so I met a guitarist out there named Peter Sprague, I went to hear him play my first night in California. He was 18 years old. I was 22. And he was playing with Butch Lacey, who was the piano player who lived out there, who I'd say within 6 months was hired by Sarah Vaughan after Lou Levy left. So anyway, this kid's 18 years old. He's playing his ass off, and I went up to him after the set and told him how much I enjoyed it and asked him, how is it possible that such a young person could play like this? And how can you play like this? That's what I said. And he said, I practice. And so I said, just naively, what do you practice? And he said, well, come by my house tomorrow and I'll give you a lesson. So I went. This was literally my first night in California. I had a Volkswagen bus. I slept in the bus that night and went to his house the next day, took a lesson, and decided to move there and study with him. And I started practicing 8 hours a day. And that's the thing about music and about being at music school, too. Music is really a kind of, you're learning by doing. It's a different kind of learning than, learning by reading a book or having someone tell you something, like in, 76, the Declaration of it. It's not that kind of learning. It's like you learn something and you do it and you understand and it burns synapses in your brains and you get muscle memory and your ears are getting trained and, it's learning on so many different levels and it transforms you.
Yeah.
And so, especially if you start doing something 8 hours a day, just because of the love, and the excitement of it, your learning curve is very steep at that age. So, I was able to get started. I moved back, after 2 years in San Diego, I moved back to the East Coast and hung out in Boston and then realized, Jackie Byard was teaching at New England Conservatory, and I went for my master's degree there, Jackie Byard. And then when he left, Fred Hirsch was teaching there. So those people, and Miroslav was there, and Dave Holland, and just being around those musicians. I don't think Fred really showed me very much, but just by going to, watching him play and hearing how he was inside this envelope of the sound, I think I learned a real lot about the spatial aspects of music.
Well, you answered so many questions I had, and I'm always so fascinated when, you can learn from musicians like Bill Evans and be around by osmosis and soak in what these guys are doing. That had to be just an amazing lottery ticket to have at that age.
Yeah, it wasn't until, I would say I was 30 that I started, transcribing note for note what Bill Evans was playing and, playing exactly along with the record and learning how his voice leading worked and about his, what all the harmony was and how it's not unlike a real book where there's a chord and then another chord. The whole thing about the way jazz musicians really play is they're moving to a chord, so they're using something to approach the next chord. And, Jackie Byard in my first lesson said, okay, we're playing, I don't know, let's play Just Me, Just You, or Just You, Just Me, that, whatever that tune that Evidence is based on. He'd say, write me out 10 different versions of this harmony. It's like, what do you mean? Isn't this just the tune? And you start writing out, 2 changes a bar or, something to just turn the corner up to get to the bridge or something. And then you listen carefully to what Monk and anyone else who's playing that tune is doing. And they're, doing exactly that. They're moving through harmonies. They're getting to places in the tune. They're turning corners. They're paying attention to so much detail. And so the osmosis thing about being around these people has something to do with like knowing how good the music feels and seeing how they're relating to the other people in the band and knowing that it's it's much more than just about the harmony and all the details. It's about, the communication aspect of it. And what, who you are and being yourself. But I don't know, these kind of things take a little bit of time, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the amazing thing that I've learned so much over really delving into not only listening to jazz, but hearing first person about jazz is that all of this seems to be conversations. It's like walking away from a good dinner party. You have a great conversation, things are clicking. It's like a jazz set. You guys are on the stage communicating with each other, but through music, not words. And that's the beauty of the harmony of everything.
Really nice way of putting that. Yeah, Joe, I totally agree with you. And, if you're willing to be present, not just do all the talking, you might learn something, and there might be some magic that happens that you didn't expect. The conversation might go to some really unusual places. You might, really find out something about another person or yourself.
That's for sure. So it's safe to say you've spent your life dedicated not only performing but teaching music. That from an early go in your life, did you always know that you were going to be in music, or were there other dreams?
I have to say that my parents gave me a really great cultural education, and they really felt that was important. And they took music lessons. It was expected that I wouldn't be a musician, And I grew up in New Jersey. I had to move all the way to California, as far away in this country as you could possibly be, to be able to make the decision, no, this is really what I want to do. I don't know. I think it took me a little bit longer than some people to realize, at age 24, I'm going to really start applying myself, not just practice an hour or 2 a day.
You've obviously at this point in our discussion, it's very clear that you've learned firsthand from masters. But in a formal education environment at Haverford College and New England Conservatory, what did you learn about music in a formal environment?
I would have to say that I'm a little bit concerned about music pedagogy, because there's just too much, having to be able to produce and measure something. Jazz education has tended towards, this is the chord and this is the scale that you play, and that's really not about how it works. And same thing with learning about the rules of counterpoint, which is the kind of music courses I would take at Haverford College. I'm really grateful for all of those things. In the last 5 years, I've been in the contemporary improvisation department at the New England Conservatory, which is a little bit different, very different than the jazz department. And they're both amazing departments, but the contemporary improvisation department has a lot more to do with non-genre-based music education, so that you're learning things by ear, you're learning to sing things back, memorize things, and then play them on your instrument. So Rand Blake will have people, learn Al Green songs or Billie Holiday songs or Mahalia Jackson songs, sing them exactly like them, like all the details, and then try to get those same vocal inflections on your violin or piano or whatever it is that you're learning. And then it's kind of a long-term memory thing, building the muscles of memory, which allow you to, respond and remember what you just played so that you can play more thematically or motivically. You can remember what you played and let the music tell you what to do next instead of what your brain wants to tell you what to do next. This is the chord and this is the scale.
Yeah.
So how would I say? I mean, I'm really grateful. New England Conservatory was the first conservatory to have a jazz program. Gunther Schuller started that about 45 years ago. And being at that conservatory, around people who got a really great sound out of the piano, and having classical teachers available and allowing your studio to be with two teachers. You could study with a classical pianist and a jazz pianist. So I'm really grateful that that school exists and gave me this kind of education. I'm not sure it's available everywhere.
So let me kind of switch gears here to travel, which tends to be a big part of a jazz musician's diet. You've been extensively through the U.S., and you've been to Japan at least 15 times, which, as far as I'm concerned, that's the international land of jazz worship. What is it like? I mean, I love the
Oh, my God. Yeah, you go there and, the first time you're there, no one's applauding during the tunes or anything, and you think, oh, my God, what's happening? You look out in the audience, they have their eyes closed, and they're all, they're very, very worshipful and great listeners, and, people have said such beautiful things to me after I played there.
What is it like? That's what I'm getting to, the crux. Like you said, the great compliments. And I've always heard that you can hear a pin drop in Japan when you're playing because they're so absorbed. And that fascinates me. Not only am I a sushi lover, as a jazz lover, I might explode if I went over there and experienced that firsthand. That would be amazing to me. But what is it like as a musician to go in front of a crowd that's totally wrapped and enthralled in what you do as a human being, and are so complimentary about that? So I'm more specifically focused on Japan. What is that like?
What can you do? I mean, you have to be really, really grateful. You have to kind of know how generous this is of people to give you that kind of attention. And in that way, I feel you have to be generous back, and not be nervous and not think that it's just about you. It's about the music, and it's about this opportunity to be together and, listening together. That their act of listening is just as much a part of the music as you playing. It really, it softens the boundary. It's not like there's a wall in front of the stage and you're up there and they're out there. I feel like in Japan, you might have big venues, but there's also really tiny, intimate venues. And kind of seeing that you can't say one thing is more important, than another. You might have somebody who comes up to you and says wow, your music is, like the sound was like some kind of purification, like water, like I felt like I was dipped in a bath of pure sound. And you're wow, what American would say something like that? And then you're talking further and you realize this person says, I've never met a foreigner before. You're out in the Japanese countryside, and this person's never met an American or anyone, just never talked to somebody from another country before. And you're thinking wow, I thought this jazz was all about my culture and about this. But really what we're trying to do is play music that everyone can relate to, no matter whether they have tons of jazz experience or not. And they say something like that, and it's just so gratifying. I mean, to realize that this is why you're doing this.
Yeah.
And they're able to tell you, yes, it's working. What you worked on your whole life is coming across in this way. without words, just through the sound that you love and that they sense that love and dedication.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's symbiosis right there. I'm going to come back to the States here on this question here. You've been in Boston since '81, and I'm always fascinated by all of the hubs that exist in this country where people play jazz and how they interact with the community and what the community is like. What is the greatest thing about being a jazz musician in Boston?
They're such great questions. When I first got here, there were so many great faculty members. That's what I have to say. The great thing about being in Boston is the schools and the faculty members and the people who've chosen to live here and the community that's made around that. I immediately got hired by this Buddy Rich alumni named Jimmy Mosier, who was kind of a local hero here. Buddy Rich was still really famous, and Jimmy was a great alto player. And, just to get kind of like taken under the wing of this guy, meeting all these other famous musicians in town, many of whom have died, many of whom are still teaching at Berkeley or New England. But what's the other part of that is that super talented young people are coming from all over the world here. I could name any, number of people that I've seen, Donnie McCaslin, just as a young kid comes and now he's, like who he is, or Kurt Rosenwinkel, or, there's people now, or Leo Genovese when he was here. There's a couple kids and a couple piano players at New England Conservatory, Chris McCarthy and Isaac Wilson, who are going to be really, really famous soon, and you just see them and, you hear them and it just keeps you on your toes in a way that is really inspiring, and I'm really, really grateful for that. There's, young people who are so devoted, who are so focused at such an early age and are just so talented. That's what, and they want to, and they're coming from all over the world now to go to school at New England or Berkeley, and you hear about them right away, and you just have to make the effort to go out and hear them.
It's probably inescapable when you see these young players to not be reflective on your own career. So this is kind of a question about, after all of these decades of being in jazz, 15 plus albums, going to Japan, going all over the place, when you kind of close your eyes and have that Bartles and James moment on the porch, what do you think about your career? How do you feel?
So I feel so much gratitude that I'm able to spend a life as a musician. That's mostly it. That this life, that I've been able to do this my entire life and make a living and even have a kid, who's grew up and is, wonderful. And I would say though that, the size of the career or whatever, that you can't really, the main thing that I think about now is that you just can't measure it in the traditional way, like, am I playing at Newport Jazz Festival? No. Am I, so what?
Right.
Really, that's what I have to say. It's just so what? Jazz is still somewhat of a meritocracy, and I'm really, really grateful for that. And I go to Newport Jazz Festival. I'm really blown away by the people I hear and the direction the music is going. And, I still feel like I'm making music that's reaching people, and I have a pretty loyal following here that come to hear me play. So I'm really just grateful for the world that I'm in and the community and people that I play with and play for. And, it's kind of like we had a really famous politician here, Tip O'Neill, who was the Speaker of the House of the U.S. in Congress. And just to paraphrase what he says, I'm really happy just to say that all jazz is local.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, that's cool.
And that, I feel like I'm a resident, well-known, pianist in this pretty small town. I'm not in New York. I didn't move to New York. But, because of the school and teaching there, people know who I am, and that's gratifying. Just I want to keep this going as long as I can. Got to take care of myself and
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you've been taught by a lot of great teachers in formal environments and otherwise, you know, as you mentioned, even Bill Evans, and just kind of by osmosis. As a teacher yourself, what is your philosophy? What do you want to give to your students?
I want to say such terrific questions.
Thank you.
I want to give them, you know, also this sense that this is a life's work, that there's no magic bullet, that there's no, you know, nothing that I can say that's going to just click and make everything clear for them, that this is learning by doing, and that it's a transformative process that takes time, and the only way to do it is the right time to do it is right now, every single day. You know, take your topics, get your practice journal together, understand what you want to what you're working on your sound, your technique, your time, your ability to communicate, your writing, and just go through that list of topics every single day and spend some time. You can't, you know, do something for 4 hours and then not do it for a week. You have to do it every single day. And that's really what I try to do with my students, is teach them how to practice.
Now, did you get that when you went to California with your first teacher? Was that a big deal? I know that there was a lot of talk about practice. Is that how you kind of got those skills?
It's, you know, I had a gig on Nantucket once, and there were piano players coming through this club called the Roadhouse. Kenny Werner was there, Jim McNeely, Al Galper. I mean, and all these people would come, and I would ask them, like, can you give me a lesson? You know, and they say, sure. And I would say, what do you practice? And that's how I did that early on, you know, just seeing like everyone had like their practice routine, you know, something that they worked on, that they were, how they saw like all the aspects, how they were really reflective of like what it was they were trying to get done, and how they would record themselves and try to be their own best teacher. I didn't necessarily have, you know, like a relationship with long-term relationship with a teacher, and try to emulate one person. I just saw how people took these different, I want to just say topics, and then tried to integrate them into their practice time, and then took the bigger view of what are then, you know, from those topics, where am I trying to go? What am I trying to say? Who am I? And asking those questions concurrently. Yeah. Because without that, it's just very small bore.
Absolutely. So at the end of the proverbial day, as human beings, the only way we really grow is, you know, we're only as good as the shoulders of giants that we stand on. So I ask you this. Yeah. Who would you consider your jazz heroes?
Of course, Herbie Hancock. Brilliant, you know, thoughtful, always creative, always in the moment. So, you know, in his sound and music and feeling in his playing is, you know, Coltrane, band, and Miles's band, those two bands. And then, you know, like what's happened for a certain moment, we thought that was like that jazz had gotten, the evolution was kind of linear, you know, through Dixieland and swing and bebop and to Miles and Trains, quartets and quintets. Once you start looking closely, you start to see that there's as many ways of playing jazz as there are people who play it. You know, there's as many ways to live a human life as there are people. So my heroes are the people who, you know, who you listen to, you know, who change the way you think about music, and that changes over time. So it might be John Taylor and Kenny Wheeler for a couple of years, and then it might be Fred Hirsch for a while, or, you know. So it's really hard to just say that these, you know, I still always come back to Herbie because, you know, this is a long life lived that continues to show that, you know, growth is always happening.
So I'm going to whittle this answer down a little bit here. You've seen a lot of great shows in your life. If you could get into that jazz DeLorean and punch in the digits, go back in time and see that show, where would you go and who would you see?
Really?
Yeah. You could do a couple stops, not just one.
Okay, sure. I would go back to the Schaefer Music Festival in Central Park, where you could go see, where I saw Miles play with Keith Jarrett was playing, and Steve Grossman was playing, and Airto was in the band, and Chick Corea was in that band, and Dave Holland was in that band. I would love to see that again. I would love to go back and see George Duke and his band again at the Bijou in Philadelphia with Alfonso Johnson. Of course, I would want to see the Trains Quartet, and I watched the video of Miles with Herbie and Tony. I mean, I would just want to see that over and over and over and over and over again. That band. There's only one concert in Sweden that's on film of those guys. I would want to see that band play.
Yeah.
With Wayne and Miles and Tony and Herbie and Ron. I would just, that's what I would want to go see.
Right on. Why do you love jazz?
Because the values, the core values, are about staying present and about making it new every single time, that you can't step into the same river twice. And that's the way life is, and that you can learn so much about life from the music. What you take off the stand, it's not like it's, if you think about the amount of hours you spend performing, we're learning all the time from on and off the stage, and we bring everything to it. So the reason I loved jazz at first was because it felt so good. I'd never heard anything that swung before, and then you're just so compelled by how it makes you want to dance. But as you get older and you realize it's not just about having a good time, it really is about what you learn about life and being able to go with the flow, react, not just react, but respond with kind of wisdom and kindness and connectedness to the people you're relating to. And that's what I hope. I mean, that's obviously what the world needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to learn to listen to each other. And I hope, I know the politicians aren't going to solve the problems of the world. The musicians might be the next ones to do that.
I believe that. I do. Everything's going to come down to this question, Bert. Everybody has a version of who you are. Your family does, your friends, your business associates, everybody that's looking at you from a crowd. But who do you think you are? When you wake up in the morning, what is your perception of who you are and what you're given to this world?
Well, I would take it a different direction and say that there's no one thing that you can boil it down to, that like the Buddha said, we get in trouble when we start identifying ourselves as a certain thing, I think that we change, we're able to connect and respond, and our conditioning makes us a certain way, and we have a personality, but it really, you could ask me about what I think some traits of my personality are, or what kind of qualities I'm trying to cultivate. It's kind of openness and trusting, and trying to see the goodness in people. But I don't think I can boil it down. I'm a dad, I'm a teacher, I'm a student, I'm a husband, I'm a friend, I'm a jazz musician, I'm a lifelong learner, I'm a meditator. I don't know what to say. None of those sum up who I am. They're all just many, many, many facets of who we each are. And just trying to be kind and skillful and not make a bigger mess in the world.
It's a great answer. You summed it up. That's it. That was your unique answer, and it's perfect, man. And I think that's a fitting way to kind of wrap everything up. Bert, thank you for opening up your world. Thank you for all the music, and most certainly thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Joe. I'm just so grateful that, you found me. I don't know how that happened. Really excited to get your email and that you wanted to talk.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Boston, New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Bert for his music and his story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store, or visit theneonjazz.blogspot.com for all things Neon Jazz. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.